This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, Agun Erev Shabbos Rabbi. So here we are, we're in Chodesh Elul. Of course, the well-known remez to Elul, Ani l'doidi, the doidi li haroyeh b'shosh shanim. There's a pasuk in Amos, Perek Gimel, pasuk Ches. Aryeh shag milo yira. The lion that roars, who is not afraid? When the lion roars, who is not afraid? Even the hardest of hearts, even the most powerful, strongest, fearless, but when they hear that mighty roar of the lion, who would not be afraid? Comes the Shlach HaKadosh, and the Shlach HaKadosh is Megala, an amazing remez. Aryeh Aleph Reish Yud Hey is a remez to the 4 awesome times of the year. Says the Shlach HaKadmonim Nasnu Siman Aryeh Shag Milo Yira Aryeh Rashi Tevos Elul Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur Hoshana Rabbah. Aryeh is the Rashi Tevos for Elul Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur and Hoshana Rabbah. The Matei Moshe Rav Moshe Mas, Talmud of the Marshal, he also brings this remez. Aryeh is Rashi Tevos Elul Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Hoshana Rabbah. Milo Yira, who is not afraid? Who is not afraid? So what do we see from this remez? Is that not only is Rosh Hashanah a time of Yira, not only is Yom Kippur and Hoshana Rabbah times of Yira, Elul is also a time of Yira. Another idea, another source, that Elul is a time of fear, of apprehension, of anxiety, so to speak. The pasuk in Tehillim says, "Lulei ha'amanti lirois b'tuv Hashem b'yaretz chayim." In L'David Hashem Araviyishi, Parak Chav Zayin, pasuk Yud Gimel. Lulei, we know al pi Mesaira, there are dots not only above Lulei but under Lulei. We know when there are dots on a letter, that indicates not to read the letter. But what do dots above and below teach me? The Baal HaTurim says in Parshas Nitzavim, another remez to Elul is Umal Hashem es levavcha v'es levav Rashi Tevos Elul lekach noagu lahashkim lehispalel slichos. Therefore, the minhag is to wake up early to say slichos from Rosh Chodesh Elul and on. V'chein lulei ha'amanti lirois b'tuv Hashem. Lulei is oisios Elul. That from Elul and on we are chared neged Hashem. Look at it carefully. Lulei ha'amanti lirois b'tuv Hashem. Lulei oisios Elul. From Elul and on, what does it say? Charaditi. We tremble. Says the Baal HaTurim. From Elul and on we tremble. The Matei Moshe also brings the same remez. Lulei ha'amanti lirois b'tuv Hashem. Lulei l'mafreya is Elul. Okay? So I think this is something we all instinctively know. Aryeh shag milo yira. That not only is Rosh Hashanah a time of Yira, Elul is also. Lulei ha'amanti. We know that during Elul, it's a time of Charada. Really? Is it really a time of Charada? Elul is a time of Yira? No. Mehichitesi. We know Rosh Hashanah is a Yom Adin, so you have to be afraid. Yom Kippur is a Yom Adin, so you have to be afraid. For example, the Rambam in Hilchos Chanukah, look at number 8. The Rambam in Hilchos Chanukah says, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, we don't say Hallel, because there are days of Tshuva, and Yira, and Pachad. They're not days of Simcha. But is Elul a time of Din? There's no Din in Elul. The Elul are not Yemei Din. If anything, Elul is called, Rabbi said, what is Elul? Yemei Ratzain. Days of Ratzain. For example, by the way, there's a whole shaila, for example, an Avel. Is an Avel allowed to daven on Rosh Chodesh?
Usually not.
The answer is yes. The answer is yes. In fact, in my yeshiva, the minhag is an Avel dafka davens on Rosh Chodesh. Why not?
With Hallel?
Not Hallel, but Rosh Hashanah. There's a minhag. People go crazy over it. There's only a minhag not to daven on Rosh Chodesh. There's no aveira for an Avel to daven on Rosh Chodesh. It's a minhag. Or let's say Erev Shabbos. Or let's say it's only minhag. It's not aser. But the Rabbi Yehuda, in Madura Kama, Siman Lamed Beis, he says regarding the days of Elul, "V'oy dafilu lefi svarasan mikamakar ma inyan yemei din limei Elul." What does Elul have to do with din? Vafilu yemei haslicha shekaydim Rosh Hashanah. Even the days of slichas before Rosh Hashanah, einam yemei din. The days of slichas are not yemei din. Adarabba yemei rachamim. They're days of mercy, v'ratzon. After all, we know Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Har Sinai the third time on Rosh Chodesh Elul, because the days of Elul are Yemei Rachamim, Yemei Ratzon, V'hem Arbaim, Yom Achronim, Moshe Rabbeinu Bahar, V'nisratz Eloi HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Only V'Rosh Hashanah Hu Shemaschel Hadin. We don't say HaMelech HaKadosh during Yemei Slichos, and we certainly don't say HaMelech HaKadosh from Rosh Chodesh Elul. So the Shaila is, what is the concept of Aryeh Shoag Mila Yira? Why do you have to be afraid during Elul? Elul is not Yemei Din. V'haraya, you don't say HaMelech HaKadosh. The Rabbi Yehuda even says it's Yemei Rachamim, it's Yemei Ratzain. Or the Chayadim says, the days of Elul are Lefi Shahayu Yamim Elu Yemei Ratzain. Chayadim and Klal Kuf Lamed Ches says, the days of Elul are days that God is inclined to show us favor, and therefore every year, the Rachamim is Nisoirer. By the way, look at number 7. Look at number 7. This is the kasha of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi in his Sefer Yerach L'Mayadim, and he quotes that Rav Dan Segal also asked this question: why include Yemei Elul together with Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Hoshana Rabbah? Rosh Hashanah is a Yom Hadin. Yom Kippur is a Yom Hadin. Hoshana Rabbah is Yom Adin. Elul are not Yemei Din. Elul are Yemei Rachamim. Why would you say Aryeh Shag? It should be Reyeh Shag, not Aryeh. Elul are not Yemei Din.
Can I say why? When you hear a lion roar from far away, you get scared before he's coming close. When it's coming, you get scared. It's coming close. But it's scared, you're ready to roar.
Elul is not roaring.
Yeah, but you know it's coming. It reminds you it's coming.
So you'll say Pashup Pshat is, even though there's no din during Elul, but the din is getting close, so you have to start being afraid. If that's the case, what does it got to do with Elul? Why not from Tisha B'Av and on? Why not Av? Why Dafka Elul? It has nothing to do with Elul then. Maybe 15 days. What's the concept that Dafka Elul you should be afraid of? If there's no din in Elul, it's only because of the impending judgment. Here, take a look at the way he asks it. He says like this: Madua nimna chodesh Elul yachad Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur Hoshana Rabbah of a time of Yira. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are Yomim Shel Yira because you're made in. So you could say Aryeh Shoag, like the Rambam says. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are Yira. Aval Elul, we know. The Chayodim writes that Elul are Yemei Ratzain, Yemei Rachamim. The Rabbi Yehuda writes that Yemei Rachamim v'Ratzain. The Lashon Rabbi Yehuda is Ma Inyan Yemei Din Limei Elul. Even the days of Slicha, says the Rabbi Yehuda, are not Yemei Din. They're Yemei Rachamim v'Ratzain. So, Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi says, Pashup Pshat is, look at number 11, Ube Pshutai. So, Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, Sefer Yerach L'Mayadim, we featured many times. One of the Mechabrim is a good Chaver of mine, Moshe Gruen. So he says very simply, this is what everybody, I'm sure, thought, that Ube Pshutai Yesh L'Farish, De'enechanami. There's no inherent reason to fear Elul, it's only because Rosh Hashanah is coming. Ein hayira b'chodesh Elul mitzad yemei Elul atzmam. The fear of Elul is not because of Elul, ela sheyireim by machmas hadin hamiskarev lavai. It's because we're afraid because of the impending din. Like Rabbeinu Yoina says in the Sefer Hayira, from when Elul comes until after Yom Kippur, yihei yachared v'yarei me'emas hadin. Okay, that's something I think everybody understands. We're afraid of the impending din. In fact, in the Sefer Ar Yisrael, the Ar Yisrael are the letters of the Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. It was put together by Rabbi Itzela Blazer of Itzela Petterberg. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter writes very awesome words, very fearsome words. Rabbi Yisrael Salanter writes, when the Chazan would call out, Rosh Chodesh Elul, when people would hear the word Elul, look at the word he uses, Melafanim. In the past, kasher yadati, when I knew, kol ish achzai palotsos, people would be gripped with palotsos, mikol hakore kadosh Elul, from the awesome proclamation of the month of Elul. Now, what does the word palotsos mean? Palatzos is not yira. Palatzos is not pachad. Palatzos is much worse than that. Palatzos is something like palpitations, but it's worse than palpitations. Palatzos is more like convulsions. People would kemat die when they heard Elul was coming. That's the way it used to be. Now it's also the same, but the reason is because people know the summer is ending and they're upset. But it used to be, people would be gripped with like epilepsy. That's what the word palatzos means. Look at the Malbim. Where does it say palatzos in Tanakh? And the reason I'm bringing this out, I remember I had a Rebbe in 10th grade who learned with us the Sefer Koich Bayar, and one of the words we had there was palatzos, and he highlighted the word palatzos. But here, Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi also makes a notation and highlights this word that Rabbi Yisrael Salanter uses, palatzos. Achar kach nezbatel gufay, on the pasuk in Yeshaya, Perek Chaf Aleph, pasuk Daled, Ta'a levavi palatzos bi asasni eis neshef chishki samli lacharada. The Malbim says, you know what palatzos are? Achar kach nezbatel gufay bichlal ki ta levavi v'nezbatel koyach hachayim shaloi v'yoyser mizeh ki palatzos bi asasni. You know what that means? Ka konvalisian. I guess those are convulsions. The harodas kol hagidim, the trembling of all of the blood passageways. Bitul kol haguf, basically complete astonishment. So we have over here just a few anecdotes about the way tzaddikim would conduct themselves when they heard that Elul was coming. And Pashup Shad in the Aryeh Shag Milo Yira, why Elul is included. Pashup Shad and why the Balaturim and the Matei Moshe say that from Elul and on, Charadati Neged Hashem, is as we know from the practice of Gedolei Yisrael, the great Yira they had from Rosh Chodesh Elul. Look at here, number 15. This is from the Sefer Kadosh Elul on page 31. That already from Shabbos Mavarchim, when they called out Rosh Chodesh Elul Yiyah, they would be gripped with Chil, Urada, Pachad, and Ema. They say about Rabbi Yisrael Salanter that his Musaf on Shabbos Kodesh Mavarchim Elul, when they would announce Rosh Chodesh Elul, Zi'aza es nafshay, his soul was stirring or shaking, and he was already davening like a Yomim Naram Dika davening, even though his regular Monday davening on a regular Monday was like, you wish your Ne'ilah was like that, but nevertheless there was a heightened tefillah, a heightened yira during already the Musaf of Shabbos Mavarchim Chodesh Elul. That Sefer says that they say on the Chafetz Chaim that a great Rav said over that he once davened with the Chafetz Chaim on Shabbos Mavarchim Chodesh Elul, and when the Chazan said Rosh Chodesh Elul, his body started mamish shaking, and he broke out in tremendous crying until the awesome Ema and Yira fell over the whole tzibur. Also, it's brought down that Rabbi Moshe Aaron Stern, the Mashgiach of Kamenetz, heard from Rabbi Yosef Salant that when he was younger, he davened in the Shabbos Mavarchim Elul together with the Pri Yitzchak of Yitzchak Petterberger. And the Gaboim knew that Rabbi Yitzchak Petterberg would go into his Boididos during Chodesh Elul, so they asked him to daven for the Amud. By the way, Rabbi Yitzchak Blazer, more than that, Rabbi Chafetz Chaim writes about Rabbi Yitzchak Petterberg that Rabbi Yitzchak Petterberg had a Tainas Dibor from Rosh Chodesh Elul until after Yom Kippur. He didn't talk. If I'm not mistaken, his wife had a baby, so he wrote on a piece of paper, Mazel Tov. Anyway, when he davened for the Amud and he said, Rosh Chodesh Elul, he broke out with Bechi, tremendous crying that the whole shul followed after him. Also, they say over from one of the Gedolei Admorim, Rabbi Yitzchak Shlomo Unger, Bezdin of the Chug Chasam Sofer, that one time he was standing next to the Belzer Rebbe at the time of Rosh Chodesh benching Elul, and he saw how his whole body was shaking also when they were Mavarech Chodesh Elul.
Which Belzer Rebbe?
So Reb Aaron. So if already these Gedolim were afraid and in great awe from Shabbos Mavarchim Elul, halachas kama v'kama during the month of Elul itself, in preparation for the Yom Adin, they were certainly in great trepidation and fear. But Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi is not satisfied with this, because if the Ema of Elul, if the reason why Elul is included in Aryeh Shag is only because the din is coming, then what's it got to do with Elul? Then it has nothing to do with Elul. Why not? Well, what happens Rosh Chodesh Elul? Like the second Rosh Chodesh Elul comes, all of a sudden you're afraid, and a minute before not. They should have started from Chav Hey. Yeah, you learn the halachas of the Chag. What's it got to do with? Beforehand you're good, and now all of a sudden you're afraid. That's a din in Hilchas Chag. But if it's only because of the impending din, then l'chayra it has nothing to do with Chodesh Elul specifically. A day later, a day earlier. So we're about to learn a tremendous revelation, which we're going to present first the words of Hagoin Rav Aaron Kotler, in the Mishnah of Aharon, that it's not just that Elul are preparing for the din of Rosh Hashanah, but actually something happens Rosh Chodesh Elul. And what is that? It says Rav Aaron in the Mishnah of Aharon, Chelik Beis, page Kuf Lamed Beis. It says like this. He says, Kasav b'Tehillim lemishpatecha amdu hayayim. In judgment we stand today, ki hakol avadecha. Because we're all your servants. What is this referring to? Hamachuvan l'Rosh Hashanah. The intention here is to Rosh Hashanah, like we've mentioned many times. What is Rosh Hashanah called in Tanakh? Hayayim. Atem nitzavim hayayim. V'yesh hayayim harasolam. V'yesh lahaven shari yom adin hu al-briya kula. The din is on the whole creation. HaKadosh Baruch Hu maybe b'meshadas kol ha'masim. Umaz ha'shach la'avdos. What does that have to do with the servants of Hashem? What that means is the servants of Hashem. In other words, Hashem judges everyone, servant, not servant. What does it got to do with the servants? The answer is the servants of Hashem oimdim l'mishpat. They prepare for mishpat. That means hainu ba'im lihishafet. They come to be judged. Umamidim atzmam l'mishpat. They ready themselves. And when do they ready themselves? V'hinei, listen carefully. Hahazmana l'mishpat hi me'rosh chodesh Elul. The summons go out Rosh Chodesh Elul. The judgment takes place Rosh Hashanah. But we know, whenever there's a judgment, you always get summoned to court. You always get summoned. When do the summons go out?
30 days before.
You're summoned. Why 30 days? Zman Bezdin Lamed Yoim. The way Bezdin operates, and we're going to see, this is not Rav Aaron's Chidush, Zman Bezdin Lamed Yoim. There's a halachic concept. Bezdin operates with a 30-day preparation. Bezdin issues the summons 30 days before. Uchvar avar chodesh Elul, and if Elul has passed, we have not prepared ourselves. Icharnu ad kai, we've delayed until now. So at least we need to take advantage of Erev Rosh Hashanah. There's a Medrash Tanchuma that the Gedolim, they begin at least preparing themselves. Erev Rosh Hashanah, and Rosh Hashanah forgives us a third. Now, it says Rav Aaron, and I think we've already gotten in the crux of the idea that we're going to mention, but let's just read his words here in the next paragraph. Those who are busy, the truth is, people who are busy, they don't pay attention to the summons. But people of B'nai Torah, Shetairasam Umnasam, that Torah is their profession. That's us, right? We're all retired over here. So our job is learning, or at least today we're learning. So we're B'nai Torah. We know the obligation. How great is our obligation to prepare ourselves for judgment? Like Chazal say, someone who's called to judgment and he doesn't come, we put him in cherem. The Gemara Moed Katan Daf Tazayin. Even if the tviyah is only shava pruta, even if the chayv is only davar muat, but nevertheless, if you don't show humility to the summons of the court, now we're not dealing with the pruta anymore. Now we're dealing with insolence. Now we're dealing with the chutzpah to the court, because now you're a masariv ladin, and we learn this from a pasuk. Karu sham Parei Melech Mitzrayim, Sha'oin Hever HaMoyed. Rashi over there explains, Karoi Sham, Shamta. It's a cherem. In other words, put Paroi in cherem because he passed the time. He delayed the time. Says how great is the obligation to prepare ourselves? What does it mean to prepare ourselves? We need to come up right the same way if a person was being summoned to court, he would hire an attorney, and the attorney would prepare with him all the arguments he's going to use. I'm a good citizen, I have this credit to my name, I didn't really mean it. Well, that's what we need to do to prepare ourselves for the Yom Hadin with Tainas Toivos, Praklitim Toivim, like it says in the Mishnah in Avos. Who are our defense attorneys? Says Avos, Paragdal Mishnah Gimel, Kala Oisa Mitzvah Achas, Koin Eloi, Praklit. That besides the schus and weighing the mitzvah, we're Koina Praklit. What kind of praklit? A defense attorney, a sanegar. And the sanegar is, what is our greatest sanegar? Says Rav Aharon, besides the actual zechus of the mitzvah itself, you know what the sanegar? Harei enoi mishana hadin be'etzem elamamlitz umare tzadei azchus harei nivra mikayach hamitzvah malach v'nasa tikkun b'ilamos. That is the sanegaria. He says, so this is the idea that Rav Aharon is trying to bring out, that, but for our purposes, we see a Yisoid Gadol. That Elul is not only a time that we prepare for a judgment that is coming, but there is a degree of process that already began. What happened? What occurred? In other words, does something happen during Elul? Everybody knows Rosh Hashanah, Hashem there's a din. And during Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, starts to make tshuva, there's a concept of beinanim. And Yom Kippur is a judgment, is a chasima, and maybe Hoshana Rabbah is the last chasima gedola. But what happens on Elul? Elul, says Rav Aharon, hazmana lamishpat. You've been summoned. Says Rabbi Yerucham, look at number 18, Harei lamanu midvarav, Rosh Chodesh Elul, makabel kol adam hazmana ladin. Then on Elul, you get the letter that makes you tremble. Very often people are more scared when they get the first letter than at the... Right? The one thing nobody wants to get in the mail is...
Jury duty.
The letter. No, worse than jury duty. Jury duty is a halbut, halavai, right? The letter. The letter is quite fearsome. Well, actually, Baruch Hashem, this idea has an earlier source from the Sefer Leket Yosher. The Leket Yosher are the minhagim of the Baal Trumas Hadeshen, Rabbi Yisrael Isserlin, from one of his Talmidim. And look at number 19. Nachzor l'tshuva me'Rosh Chodesh Elul ve'elach yaschel b'zrizos u'v'zahiros. One should begin with zrizos and carefulness. Why? Ki oz lamid yoim koydem yom adin. It's 30 days before the yom adin. Zman bezdin lamid yoim. A zman of bezdin is 30 days. Presumably he means that the operation of bezdin begins in advance 30 days. By the way, he says something that we've always mentioned in the past from Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, but Baruch Hashem also we found an earlier source. What does the word Elul mean? What does Elul mean? So we know that the names of the months Elul mi Bavel, but there's always a Jewish etymology of the words. What does Elul mean? If you look in Parsha Shlach lecha anoshim v'yasuru esaretz Canaan, spy out the land of Canaan. What does Targum Onkelos say? V'alilon. Elul means to spy out, to investigate, to introspect. But this is something I always heard b'shem Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. It's in the Halicha Shloimei. But here we have a source in the Rishonim already that Elul means a lashon of v'alilon, to spy out. But this is the chiddush that we're presenting, that there is a degree of process that already began in Chodesh Elul. In fact, another makar, Rabbi said, take a look, another makar. We know there's a pasuk that we lay on the Tanesim, Dirshu Hashem bihimatzai, kirauhu b'yaisai karayv. And Chazal ask a stira, seek out Hashem when He can be found, but the pasuk says what?
He's near.
What is that? It says Dirshu Hashem bihimatzai, but it says Karav Hashem l'cha shegru v'ames. B'imam Hashem is always available. B'chol kareinu elav, right? Mika Hashem Elokeinu b'chol kareinu elav. So is Hashem only available when He's available, or all the time? Says the Gemara, ha b'yachid, ha b'tzibur. B'tzibur, God's always available. B'yachid, it's only b'himatzai. In fact, the Gemara v'yachid eimas. When is God available to a yachid? Elul asar yamim shabein Rosh Hashanah Yom HaKippurim. So that's what it means b'himatzai. B'himatzai, when is God available? Those are the 10 days of repentance. But the pasuk continues. Kira'uhu, call out to him. B'yoisai karov, when he's close. Says Reb Pinchas Horowitz, the Baal Hafla, in the Panim Yafais, in Parshas Acharei Mos. V'yesh Farish, when it says Dirshu Hashem b'himatzai is aseres yimei tshuva, but then it says Kira'uhu b'yoisei karov, that a person should not wait to do tshuva until Rosh Hashanah, but rather b'yoisei karov. When is it karov? Rosh Chodesh Elul, Chumash Amru Chazal, Rosh Chodesh Elul, Sharei Rachamim Niftachim, like the Rabbi Yehuda said, like the Chayei Adam said, but what else? For whose man bezdin lifnei Rosh Hashanah. In other words, the court's already open. The court is open already. Like Rav Aharon said, the summons has been issued. The process has begun.
It's the audit letter.
The din has not. There is no judgment, but the process of judgment began, and therefore, says Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, this gives us an added insight into the Aryeh Shag, Mila Yira, Elul, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Hoshana Rabbah, that Elul is not just close to the time of the impending judgment, but the process of judgment already begins, Rosh Chodesh Elul. He says, L'fizeh, Muvan, Masha Etzem Hazman Shel Elul, Huzman Shel Yira. Now we understand why the Zman of Elul is a Zman of fear. Kilam Roy She'inam Yimei Adin, despite the fact they're not days of din, the time of the concept of judgment began. We've received our summons. Yira, who is not afraid? It's not a bezdin shalmata, it's hazmana ladin and the bezdin shalmala, and therefore that is why we have this remez Aryeh Shag Mila Yira. Well, why is it important to know this? Is there value in just being afraid? And the answer is yes. Just being afraid of the din is already a tremendous chus. Just having a feeling of yira and pachad and palatzos, halavai, we should be on that madrega. But just being afraid of the din is already a chus for Yom HaDin. That means we're taking it seriously. The Taz writes in Siman, Taf Kuf Pei Daled, he writes, why is there no Hala on Rosh Hashanah? Lefi Sifrei Chaim V'Amesim Psuchim. So how could you say Shira? We have confidence. V'Af Agav Sh'anu B'Tuchim Sh'Neitzei Zakon B'Din Mikol Makom Tzarech Liyos Yarei B'Chared Me'emas Hadin. We need to be afraid. V'Yidei Kain Nizkel L'Zchos. And by doing so, we will be Zoicha to the Zchos. So the Taz is saying the Yira and the Charedos alone from the Yemas Hadin is a tremendous chos. So it's important to be aware that it's not just, well, if we just say to ourselves, the din is coming, we will likely push things off. Yeah, we still have another 25 days or so. We still have quite a while. But to be aware that it's not time to push it off. The din, the process has begun. Zman Bezdin Lamed Yom. The Hazmana has been issued. And we should all be zoicha to try to feel a little bit the Aryeh Shag, Mila Yira, and should be a zechus for all of us to the Yom HaDin, Haba Aleinu, L'Toiva, V'Chananya V'Nakasha Omer.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.